connected to the. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of 4T Zoomcast, table tennis tactics and topics. Today we have a topic that is different as we take a deep look into Stadium, a revolutionary method of tournament organisation and scheduling. Helping to achieve this is the founder of Stadium, Christine Charr. Welcome, Christine. And completing the panel is TV pundit and two-times Commonwealth medalist Colin Wilson. Hello, Colin. Okay, Scotland coach Gordon Muir introduced Stadium to Scotland, and it's been used very successfully at the recent Edinburgh Open and Edinburgh Close and various ranking tournaments. So it's been very, very successful. So we've moved on. In my day, probably can't really see that. No, you can't. Where you had group sheets all over the place. With IOAR, that's the way I've always ran a tournament. And or we've had a knockout tournament with these group sheets. Now a tablet goes on every table tennis table and an iPad, and the youngsters pick it up so quickly. They just put in the scores, and in real time it goes straight to the control desk and the rankings are updated in real time. Before we start, it's the first time I've met Christine, who's 5 hours behind. And are you downtown New York, more or less?
No, I'm actually 1 hour north of the city, so I'm right outside the city. Yeah.
Right. Last time I was there, I was in Great Neck, New York. Do you know Great Neck?
Oh, nice. Yeah, there are
Yeah.
actually a few table tennis clubs out there. So
Yeah. Very good player. Alice Kimball is a good friend of mine. Okay, Christine. Right. First of all, tell us all about your sporting background, and then tell us how that evolved into getting involved in Stadium.
sure. So a little bit out of my league here in terms of the sporting background. I didn't play any sports growing up. I ran a little bit in high school, but that was it. Never had any interest. And then when I was an adult, I was working at an office in downtown Manhattan at my tech company, and they had two ping pong tables in a conference room there. And so very curious, my coworkers and I would go down there sometimes and hit a ping pong ball around. And I think that I was possibly the worst person who's ever picked up a racket in the history of the sport. But for some reason, I just got addicted. I think my theory is that I thought, oh, I couldn't be worse, so I can only get better. I just got totally addicted and I started playing, and it got to the point where we were playing like more than we were working. I think 11 o'clock after lunch, afternoon, after work, we're just playing all the time. And then eventually one of my coworkers said, well, do you know about this bar called Spin? It's in the Flatiron District, and my coworkers and I went to go check it out. And it's a ping pong bar. They only have ping pong tables with a full bar, very cool. But like real players, real competitive players, professional coaches hang out there and play there. And so I started getting into that community, and that's the first time I found out sport. I met my husband there, who also plays table tennis, and the rest is history. So since then, I've taken a lot of lessons, trainings. I play about 6 or 7 times a week now. And I've played a lot of tournaments during that time. So I've been playing for about 8 years. And the way that I got into the tournament scene was that, I mean, I was just another player playing these events. And over the years, you start to see all these patterns of like, okay, there's all of these unnecessary delays. Like, what is going on? You never know what table you're on, when the scores are coming out. It all seems very inefficient and outdated. And my software engineering background, I've been a software engineer for the past decade. I'm always a little too nosy about problems, and I think, oh, maybe there's a way I can fix this. But tournament software was something I didn't want to get into because I knew from the start it's very complicated. It sounds like a whole nightmare. Sounds like not a good way to make money. So I really was hoping someone else would build it, but no one did. So yeah, 2023, I was coming back from a teams tournament and my teammates and I were really frustrated with all the delays and how the tournament was run. And we thought, you gotta build something. My friends were saying, you've got to build something to fix this. And so I went home and started working on this project. And since then, it's just been, line by line coding out this thing, and it's grown bigger than I thought. So that's the whole story.
Okay, just I've got a couple of technical questions. Well, I think you've answered the first by lifting up your glass. I'm assuming you're right-handed.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And are you pen grip or shake hands grip?
So I play shake hand.
Yeah.
However, the weird part is that I actually started chopping at the beginning of this year. I switched to long pimples on my backhand, and I am on my way to becoming a full-on defender.
Okay, Colin. Right. Let's fire away. Colin, you ask the first question while I close the door.
Yeah, okay. Christine, the great story, thank you, and thank you for building something. So, who did you build it for first? I mean, who did you have in mind? Was it your local New York scene or club, and how did it go when you first tested it out?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I live right by the Westchester Table Tennis Center in Pleasantville, New York. And they have a monthly tournament that is pretty large, like 250 players in one weekend
Right.
every month. It just happened actually yesterday and Saturday. And so that was the first tournament I had in mind, my home club. This is where I practice as well. Uh, but it's a bit stressful because it's just so large. So we did have a few test runs at another New York club called the New York Indoor Sports Club, in Queens. And so we ran just a few smaller tests first. But from the first run, I mean, the response was so positive that we haven't looked back since.
Brilliant, brilliant. And other people have kind of come up with various ideas and things. Did you do any research into what was already out there, or did you just go from first principles with your own knowledge and skills? And how does Stadium compare to other things that you might have seen or heard about?
Great question. So from a web development perspective, from like a software design perspective, I think it's really important to listen and look what's out there first. So I did exactly that. I looked at the other options that were available. And also one of my first steps was I sat behind the control desk for a couple tournaments with the tournament director, with the referee, and just took notes on everything they were doing, all the problems that they were encountering, took pictures of the software they were using, so I could get a real understanding of the problems that were at hand. Because I think when you look at a lot of the solutions that are out there that I built by, developers that have no insight into how a tournament is actually run, it's it looks very similar, but it doesn't actually solve the very real problems that you have. So that's where I started. And then I forget the second question.
No, that was it. That was great. And yeah, and you tried it and it worked. So that's very cool. Yeah.
And what's the largest number of participants it can cope with, or is the number infinitive? Infinity.
So we haven't reached any sort of ceiling yet. I know there's certain limitations that I'm going to have to work on once we get to really huge sizes. The main thing is just the amount of data that it's loading into your device at any time. The largest event that we've hosted on Stadium so far was the Puerto Rico Butterfly Teams Tournament in 2024. And I believe that was about, I want to say 400 players. And it was a 3-day teams tournament, so that was pretty large. But I don't think that's anywhere near the capacity. The problem is once you get started, once you start getting to like, okay, you have maybe 1,000 players, and then you have hundreds of events, then the number of matches starts going into thousands. Then the question becomes, okay, how do you load all of this stuff in an efficient way while still having all the data that you need? But we haven't quite crossed that bridge yet. So right now I just load in everything at once and there's no problem.
Wow. And in terms of, I mean, I reckon from a playing point of view, there cannot really be, you don't really want more than 9 people in a group. Would you agree, Colin? In other words, playing 8 matches in a day. Again, is there no maximum there?
Yeah, yeah. From my point of view, Dave, yeah, eight or possibly 9. I mean, you've got to be pretty fit to cope with 9 matches. Obviously, depending on whether you want to, you can play shorter matches and more of them.
Yeah.
You know, you play best of 3 instead of best of 5, best of 5 instead of best of 7, etc. But the one that I've come across is the triple 3, which is, you know, three matches in a group in the morning, 3 matches in a group after lunch, 3 matches in a group late afternoon. And that's a kind of a self-sorting arrangement, which gives people 9 matches in a day. And that's I think the most that I've seen.
Yeah.
We ran a fun, it was just for fun, tournament at our club one time where we did a giant round robin where everyone that night came. I think we had, I don't know, 18 or 20 people in a giant group, but we only played best of 3, but you started each game 8-8. So things went by quickly, but we had a huge grid and it was a lot of fun.
That's great. That's the wonder of the modern software, that it can flex and it can adapt very, very quickly to the needs and circumstances. But before we drill down any more into table tennis, can I ask, is it suitable? Well, it sounds like you created it with table tennis in mind, but that might not be wholly the case. You tell me. And is it suitable for, and is it used in any other sports?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely created with table tennis in mind. But it's very similar to a lot of the other racket sports. Initially, I was a little on the fence about making it open to other sports because I didn't want to dilute the product for table tennis. I've noticed that a lot of software, once it goes generic, the quality just goes down because you can't possibly address specific needs when you're trying to address a gigantic audience. So what I'm trying to do is tread that line between going too generic and also being too, pigeonholing myself too much into one sport. So what I've decided on for now is racket sports because we share a very, very, very similar problems. They're communities that I'm familiar with. So that's where I'm starting. But I definitely am open to expanding it further. I just want to retain the quality for table tennis. That's my #1 priority.
Thank you. Lovely.
Okay. So, and then it's to those who was like me, a little bit novice, it's if you had a tournament and you decided you're going to go back to 21 points or the best of 7, the best of 3, it's easily adaptable, is it? I'm sure. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And I forgot to answer your other question, what other sports are interested. There's been a lot of interest specifically for badminton and paddle. So I'm hoping, and that goes into your scoring question, right? In badminton, you play to 21, but there's a maximum of 30 points that you can play. And so I've had that all built in. And same with tennis and paddle scoring. You do set scores instead of game scores, and that's all in the system as well.
Right.
Good.
And when do you get time to eat and sleep?
That's a good question. I am doing this full time right now, so I've been working on Stadium full time for the better part of this year. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep that up, but I'll try.
Yeah.
And then in terms, I mean, Gordon, who I work with, Gordon Muir, who you've been, he was straight into it. He understood it in seconds, and he sort of looks at me and can't understand why I don't understand it in seconds. But are you offering, if there was like the Scottish veterans have started running that, I mean, is there a tuition program that the organizer could come to you and say, actually, I'm thinking of doing this, but really don't know how to start, you know, is there any online tuition or...
Um, Good question. So I've started creating some video tutorials and writing up some documentation. My main priority is definitely trying to make the software as intuitive as possible. So whatever resources I can use to just make it easier, like whenever I get feedback saying, oh, this was confusing or I couldn't figure this out, I try to address that root cause first,
Yeah.
and then add, documentation on top of it. But the main thing is people can just email me. Right now, the user base is small enough that I respond to everyone personally. I'll set up a Zoom with you, walk you through things, answer your questions. Typically, it's not a huge time suck for me either because they just need one walkthrough usually. And then people kind of figure the rest out on their own. But yeah, I'm thinking a lot about how to scale that. Like maybe I might start doing regular streams where I go through the whole process for everyone to watch, or more YouTube videos, of course, or maybe scheduled workshops and things like that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea if you had a few tournament organisers and you said, right, it's a 20-person tournament. I'm going to talk you through it. There's 6 table tennis tables. I'm going to talk you through it and then
Right.
set them a little task to see if they can, you know, just like the coach table tennis, really, eh, Cole?
Right. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I'd like to ask Christine, um, what does the tournament organizer on the ground need in order to make this work? It sounds like we need a tablet for every table. And
Yeah, so the tablet is actually not the most common way people use the platform. Only Gordon's Club and the Westchester Club use the tablets. Most of the clubs just have people report scores directly from their phones. So you don't actually need to buy any hardware in order to use Stadium. The typical like bare bones setup is you have a laptop in order to run the admin side of things. You have all
yeah,
your players bring their phones. The beauty of that is that typically you don't run into the problem where no one has a device because within a match, there's at least two people who might have a phone. So, and within a group, you have even more devices. So usually someone has a device where they can report scores. And then the only other thing you need is Wi-Fi. So if you have a laptop, you have Wi-Fi, and the players bring their own devices, smartphones, what have you, then you can run Stadium.
Yeah.
lovely, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you give us some examples? I'm sure you can't mention them all, but can you give some examples of the kinds of formats that you can cope with that you've programmed for? We talked
Sure.
about this
So
snake example, for instance, but I'm sure there are more.
yeah, the most common format that I see is groups to single elimination. That's like the original format that I implemented. So you have a group stage and the winners of the group advance to a playoff round, single elimination bracket. Um, then you have another common format is multiple round robin stages. So you have a group, and then the winners of each group, first place of each group, play each other. All the second place winners play each other, and so on. I run that. Actually, my husband and I run that for our weekend group training that we do at the club. After training, we will run a mini tournament, is what we call it. So we do the double stage round robin, but only best of three, so we can get it done really quickly, and people can play as many others as we can squeeze in. And then, yeah, we've had all sorts of other examples, like there's certain formats where the top four players are automatically seeded into the next round, so they don't have to play the first round. And then the things I'm working on right now, I'm actually working on a bunch of features to unlock fully custom brackets. So you can do double elimination, progressive elimination, Swiss format, like all of that is coming very soon.
Great.
And from a user point of view, would you say it is all going to be user friendly? I know you're bound to say that, but if you're confident, as well as it working well, that you don't need to be an IT expert in order to be able to implement it.
I hope so. That's been one of my top priorities since day one. So anything that I feel, like I said, is confusing or complicated to anyone, I take that feedback very seriously and try to make things simpler. So if you do use it and feel like it's confusing, please write me an email and let me know.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that you try and solve those at root cause rather than just create a
Right.
video teach. In my experience, when you're looking at newish kind of apps, the more video tutorials that there are, probably the harder it is to use, and that's
Right.
the way that they're you sticking plaster over the problems.
Right.
But it's great that you take that and you go back to user interface design or whatever it is in order that it becomes intuitive. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm used to with the little that I know about IT, and that's great to hear. So thanks for your commitment to keep getting it right for the user's intuition.
Yeah.
Cool.
And in terms of early glitches, have you had early glitches or any you can tell us about that you've
Sure. I
solved?
mean, every software has bugs. So, let's see. Any interesting ones? I had a bug early on where, what was it? Um, I think there was a situation where if you replaced someone later, so if you
Oh,
finalized a draw and then replaced a player later, it turned all of the players into that player. It was horrible. Luckily, this never made it out of early testing, but I thought that was a particularly funny one, because you swap one player and then the bracket becomes just them against themselves. But I don't think anyone publicly saw that, hopefully. Um, and then, just small everyday
sure.
things like,
It- it-
yeah,
which also brings another interesting question, and which of Gordon, if you take from, I keep saying Gordon Biora, who I work with closely on tournaments, he'll do the draw the night before. Then on the
yeah,
day of the tournament, two people don't turn up, and one turns up later, whatever. So I cannot remember. And again, if you can put everyone's mind at ease, if you've got your draw already and it's all seeded and you've got them all in the right order. And
yeah,
first, I'm going to ask you two questions. Firstly, the number 3 seed doesn't turn up. That's question one. And in a 32-man tournament, your number 32, your weakest player doesn't turn up. Can you tell us how you resolve that on the day?
sure. Well, obviously it's at the end of the day, it's up to the tournament director. So there's a few different ways you can handle that.
Yeah,
One, the easiest way is to just default that player, keep your draws exactly the same,
yeah,
and it sucks for the other people in that group, but or maybe it's good for them,
yeah,
depending on how you look at it. But that's probably the easiest, uh,
sure.
easiest solution. Now, with Stadium, you can replace that player. So after a finalized draw, you can still replace players or add players to groups that already exist. The reason why is that the Westchester tournament at home in New York is very special in that they will accept players until the minute the draw is created. And sometimes a few minutes after the draw is
Yeah,
created. And yes, they definitely pride themselves on the fact that anyone can walk in and not be turned away. Now that's great for inclusion, but it is a very hairy problem
yeah,
in terms of tournament organization and software. So that being my first testing ground, I actually had to build build the platform in a way where you could make changes on the fly. And when unexpected things happen, because they always did, that you could handle them. So the answer to that is after you finalize the draw, you can still amend it. You can undo the whole thing and redo it and still retain all the changes you made before. I've gone through a bunch of iterations now, and right now it's fairly stable in how it handles those things.
Yeah. And if I can just do a follow-up question, is your number 3 seed doesn't turn up, we'll stick with that. Can your number 4 seed get elevated to 3, the 5 to 4, the 6 to 5, all the way down the line quite quickly?
Yes. So basically in that situation, what you would do is you can undo the draw, and then remove that player from the event. And by removing that player from the event, it'll just automatically move everyone up the position because you're sourcing from the event entries. So basically I have this concept that I'm calling in my mind like dynamic sources. So they're not tied to specific players. It's just, oh, this is the number 3 seed in this event. So if you remove the players or move them around or their rating changes, it's whatever the number 3 seed is. So that has been a really interesting technical challenge, is like dealing with the abstract concepts of players, the very concrete aspects of players, and all of that. So
yeah. So if we go back to the old-fashioned groups, if somebody doesn't turn up on this, you have to physically, literally rip up the sheet and write everybody's name in again. There's no other way of doing it. So that is, and that's what we've always had to do. You've got a group of sheets, they're all nicely typed out. We've got a group of blanks. An important play, it's more of a problem, or it used to be more of a problem if a seeded player didn't turn up. If somebody's unseeded, it's never been a problem. But in the old days being pre-stadium, you would literally have to tear up your sheets. There's no other way, is it, Colin? If you've got all your sheets marked out and all your groups, somebody doesn't turn up, you've literally got to physically write them in by hand, which would often slow down a tournament by about half an hour. And half an hour is vital if you're paying by the hour, and you've got to be out the building by 6 o'clock regardless. You just can't afford those kind of hiccups. So that's it. It's good to know, as well as, although it's working well when everybody turns up, it's really good to know it still works well when people don't turn up. I guess the biggest problem is if the Wi-Fi goes down, isn't it?
Yeah, right now Stadium is reliant on Wi-Fi. Obviously, most people have a data connection through their phone, set up a hotspot. I believe Gordon at his club sets up a hotspot too, just so he has control over that. Eventually, I have it on my roadmap to work on an offline version, but that's going to require a lot of work, and so I'm not sure exactly when I'll be able to release that.
Yeah. Great. So far, so good. Colin, back to you.
Okay. So one thing I'm interested in for you, Dave, is how did you and Gordon, or you or Gordon, first come across Stadium and Christine? So how did that happen? And then secondly, for Christine, what should people do now that they have heard of you to get in touch and to try this out? So first of all, to Dave, how did you first hear about it?
Well, Christian will have to answer this question because I heard about it through Gordon. So it was a case of how Gordon and Christine got together. We'd like to know.
Yeah, we have a mutual contact. That's how. So one of the tournament directors here, his name is Edmund, who was one of my first test users with Stadium in New York, knows Gordon. I'm not sure how, but table tennis community, we all know each other somehow. And so he made the connection.
Yeah.
Right.
Good.
Right.
Can Colin, you any more before we?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about how can other people get hold of
Oh,
Christine, but you
yes.
might have something
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say before
No,
then,
yeah, we
don't
always do this. Yeah, go on, Christine. Now's your time to really give
That's
us
my
your
time.
email, how to get in touch with you, etc.
Great. So the big thing actually we didn't cover is that Stadium is now free to use for organizers. So previously I was charging organizers and there's a whole switch to the model, but it is 100% free. So if you'd like to try it out, you can do so by going to stadiumcompete.com. Compete like competition. And there's an email in the footer. It says support@stadiumcompete.com that goes directly to me. I will be happy to respond to any questions. And Dave, you could also include the URL and my email in this video. And just feel free to reach out with any questions, feedback. I am happy to answer them.
Yeah, and can you give us your email now so we can all hear it?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can just email the one that I just mentioned. So
Yeah.
that's support@stadiumcompete.com.
I've got to heard it twice. And do you deal in WhatsApp or do you prefer to deal in email?
Typically email for
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
It's just easier for me to keep track of everyone.
yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, Colin, we've done pretty well. We've
Sounds
kept
great.
to our time schedule. Have you got any more? I'll be annoyed if I think of a dozen questions after Christine's gone. Have you got anything else for Christine?
No, I just want to thank Christine. I think it's great. She's
Yeah,
come on, and she's been offering her time and her trouble. She's been very open with us about what it is and how she's got to where she's got to. And I think we should certainly put in the show notes that the word free, in the title or very early on, so that people have got a really good reason to listen to this podcast. And then be able to get in touch with Christine at support@stadiumcompete.com.
yeah. But just before Colin, when did you play your first tournament?
Me,
Yeah,
I
where
played my
where
first
a
tournament.
system was used, whatever system it was.
Well, the first tournament I ever played in was the Basingstoke One Star Junior, and I played in the under 10s, and it was 1972.
Incredible.
And I
Wow.
got to the final and lost to Nikki Dines. I lost 21-17, won 21-17, lost 21-17,
Wow.
and I cried.
Yeah.
Very
Right.
good.
So
Very
Alan Dines' son.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Next question, again, before we go, Colin, again, of those 1972, what are we? Is that 53 years, is it?
Yeah, 52 years ago, 53
Yeah,
years ago.
and generally, having a flashback, what have you disliked and disliked about tournament organisation?
Oh, okay. A couple of things. I think the first one is a lot of those junior tournaments when I was very young. I mean, it's incredible. You would never think it now. But I remember literally playing until 20-1 in the morning on the Sunday night, having played all weekend. I must have been 12, 13, and then traveling a couple of hours home from wherever it was. I won't name names. We'd get home like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning, and then I'm supposed to get up for school. So a lot of them would go late into the night. A lot of that's gone away now. It's not as
Yeah,
bad as it was. But one thing I do find difficult is not knowing when you're playing next and where, and no one can tell you how long you've got to wait between one game and another. And it all seems to happen very, very kind of randomly when it's done by hand. Now, that's not to blame anybody. They're doing everything they can to make it as smooth as possible. But I think, we do have the advantage of modern technology, which can take away a lot of that problem.
yeah. Brilliant. And your worst in your 8 years of table tennis, Christine, I know you told us initially, even though Colin's been at it for 53 years, are your problems similar, that long wait and what's...
Yeah, very similar. I mean, I think the story that really like the what is it? The straw that broke the camel's back was one time I was at a tournament and some kid filled out his match cards, the group match cards. He was the last match of the group and left the clipboard under the table.
Oh,
And no
damn.
one knew that the clipboard was under the table for about an hour and a half. And we're all just sitting around waiting for our matches, thinking, why is this group taking so long? And it was just so frustrating. I mean, we were delayed by hours just because of this stupid clipboard. So yeah. I will say that I've experienced a lot of that as well, just like really late nights, not knowing where you're going. And I've had some great feedback, like some things that one thing that I didn't expect at all from Stadium is that parents have been really happy because they know when to pick their kids up.
Yeah,
I never thought of that as a feature, but
that's a very
they're
big thing.
checking it and they're checking the real-time app and they finally know within some certainty when to pick their kids up. So I think that's great.
Brilliant. Okay, we've kept well within our time frame. We've covered an awful lot. I'm expecting a lot of feedback, which I will send over to you, Christine. And big thanks. It's been enlightening. It's been interesting. It's been revolutionary. And it's been an education. So thank you, Christine. And once again, thank you to Colin. And I will say goodbye and we'll see you all again soon.
Good luck, Christine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Are you sure you want to take?